CSE Commander Alex Reed thought this was just another diplomatic mission. Then the princess dared him to try on her ancestor's armor. Now ancient star charts and weapon schematics are flooding his mind, and the suit won't let go. He was supposed to deliver condolences, not become the chosen guardian in a war against interdimensional shadows. The horizon slid into Zephyrian orbit with its official flags flying. Federation colors bright against black hull plating. The ship carried condolences for the recent royal loss, and Reed knew the formal script by heart. He stood at the viewport watching the planet turn below. But in his coat pocket rested a secondary data chip, a proposal for heightened security measures, an offer for Federation oversight. He stepped onto the landing platform and immediately noted the guards. Their posture was too rigid. Their hands stayed too close to weapon housings. They wore diplomatic silks over what looked like combat plating. He counted 6 tactical positions covering the entrance. One had a clear line of sight to the ship's engines. He registered each point without turning his head. These times required more than sympathy calls. They required insurance. The mission parameters felt wrong from day one. High Command had been too insistent. Too many meetings behind closed doors. His orders included phrases like cultural assessment and resource evaluation. He was a soldier dressed as a messenger. Reed muttered under his breath about delivering words without starting wars. He preferred clear enemies, straight lines of engagement. This felt like walking through smoke. The political backdrop felt fragile, temporary. Zephyria was ancient. A civilization with deep roots and deeper myths. The Federation was new, hungry for stability, for allies. He expected formalities, handshakes, scrolls of sympathy, maybe a shared meal. A turning point was not on the itinerary. He walked through the receiving hall. Crystalline arches overhead caught the light. His boots clicked on polished stone. The air smelled faintly of ozone and spice. Guards stood at every column. Their eyes tracked him. Not hostile, not friendly, assessing, waiting. A tall official approached. Greetings were exchanged. Voice calm, words smooth. Reed replied in kind. But his mind mapped exit routes, defensible positions. The weight of the data chip in his pocket felt heavier than it was. This diplomatic errand masked deeper galactic tensions, a quiet test of loyalty, a measure of fear. The stage was set for something far beyond protocol. He could feel it in the air. A tightness, a held breath. The Zephyrians were proud, grieving. They would not accept a protector easily, but they might accept a friend. The question was which one he was supposed to be. He followed the official deeper into the palace. Corridors branched off into shadow. He heard the hum of hidden systems, felt the vibration of machinery through the floor. This was not just a place of ceremony. It was a fortress pretending to be a home. He kept his hands loose at his sides, ready. The charade was thin, and everyone in the room knew it. The princess wasn't what he expected. Faria met him in the throne room under a canopy of living crystal. Her skin held the soft turquoise of deep ocean water. Her eyes were solid gold, not metallic, not reflective. Like liquid amber, they held his gaze a moment too long. He felt scanned, measured, understood in ways that made his spine straighten. She cut through the formalities with a blade's precision. No welcome speech, no rehearsed condolences. She thanked him for the Federation's words. Then she asked about the hidden security protocols. Her voice stayed level, calm. She knew exactly why he'd really come. Her intelligence was a quiet, sharp thing. It left no room for lies. She moved through the palace like she owned the air. Not arrogance, inheritance. Her steps were light on the crystal floors. She touched a wall as she passed. The crystal brightened under her fingers. A soft hum followed her. This wasn't just architecture. It was integrated, alive. She belonged here in a way he'd never belong anywhere. Her charm was a tool, a distraction. She smiled, made a joke about diplomatic uniforms, asked about Earth's weather, but her eyes never lost that watchful quality. She knew her world's position, knew the shadows gathering at the edges of their star system, knew the Federation's offer was both an honor and an insult. She balanced it all without seeming to try. Reed found his rehearsed lines drying up. His mission briefing hadn't covered this, hadn't prepared him for someone who saw the map behind the words. She asked about his combat history. Not the official record, the real things. The close calls, the choices made in dark places. He answered without meaning to. Her directness disarmed his training, left him feeling seen, exposed. She represented something old, a civilization that built starships but still told stories about guardians and ancient wars. Her technology was advanced, seamless, but her people still prayed to constellations that no longer existed. They held on to myths like lifelines. He could feel the weight of that history in her presence. The tension between progress and tradition, her being here, meeting him alone, signaled the mission's true gravity. This wasn't routine. The king's recent death wasn't natural causes. The guards weren't just for show. She was the last of her line, the only heir, and she was sizing him up like a piece on a game board, assessing his value, his potential use. Varia became the point where everything turned. The calm before the storm, she was the reason he'd leave this place changed, or not leave at all. She looked at him like she knew which it would be, like she'd already seen the outcomes. Her golden eyes held no surprise, only calculation. Then she smiled. A real one this time. It reached her eyes. She mentioned her ancestor's armor, called it a museum piece, a relic, said it was down in the lower halls. She joked that he should try it on, see how a human looked in Zephyrian battle gear. Her tone was light, casual, but her fingers tightened around the crystal she held. The joke wasn't just a joke. It was a test, one she didn't think he could pass. The chamber breathed cold air. It smelled of metal and dust. Reed followed Varia down a narrow stairway. The steps were worn smooth in the middle. Many feet had passed this way long ago. The room at the bottom was vast. Shadows clung to the corners. Light came from floating orbs that drifted without sound. Crystalline cases stood in rows. They held weapons, tools, pieces of technology he didn't recognize. Some looked ancient, stone carved with energy channels. Others were clearly advanced, sleek metal and woven fibers that still hummed with power. This was not a museum. It was an archive, a vault of what the Zephyrians once were. In the center of the room, set apart from the rest, stood the armor. It was mounted on a stone pedestal. No case surrounded it, no barriers. It was just there, as if waiting. The suit was a dark, textured metal, not polished. It absorbed the light. The design was functional. No decorative elements. Every line served a purpose: protection, movement, power. Varia stopped a few paces from it. Her usual confidence seemed thinner here. She spoke softly. Her voice didn't echo. The room drank the sound. She called it Kaler's armor, their greatest guardian, a hero from the time of the first shadows. She said it was never meant for display. It was a tool, a weapon, meant for one person only. The legend was that the armor chose its wearer, not the other way around. It had a consciousness, a memory. It remembered its purpose. It would only bond with a descendant of the guardian line, someone with the right blood, the right mind. It had rejected every attempt to wear it for centuries. It was considered dormant. Dead, some said. A relic of a dead age. Reed felt the weight in the air. It was heavy, old. This wasn't just history. It was presence. The chamber seemed to watch him. The floating orbs pulsed slightly. He looked at the armor. The helmet was featureless. A smooth, dark surface. No visor, no openings. It should have looked like a statue. Instead, it looked like a predator at rest. He could feel the years piled in this room. The victories. The losses. The stories told and forgotten. The legend felt real here, tangible. It was in the cool air, the silent displays, the way Varia held herself. She was part of this. Heir to it all. This was her burden, her inheritance. This was no trophy. It was a living artifact. It had a destiny, a purpose that hadn't been fulfilled. It waited. That was the feeling. A deep, patient waiting. He understood why she brought him here. To show him what was at stake. What her people were protecting. What they feared losing. She turned to him. The gold of her eyes caught the dim light. She smiled. It was a nervous gesture. She repeated her joke from earlier. Said he should try it on, see how it fits. Her tone was light, teasing. A human in Zephyrian battle gear. The idea was absurd. The suit was shaped for a different physiology. Taller, different proportions. It was a dare between new acquaintances. A moment of levity in a heavy place. It seemed harmless enough. A gesture. A way to break the tension. He agreed, a small smile on his face. A diplomatic gesture. He stepped toward the pedestal. The air grew colder. The floating orbs drifted closer. He reached a hand out. The dark metal felt warm. The metal warmed under his palm. It was a subtle heat, like stone left in the sun. He expected it to feel cold, dead. Instead, it felt like a sleeping animal. Reed glanced at Varaya. Her smile was still there, a diplomatic gesture, a moment of shared amusement. He stepped onto the pedestal. The air around the armor seemed to thicken. He reached for the helmet. His fingers had barely touched the surface when the suit moved. It didn't unlock. It disassembled. Pieces separated with a series of soft clicks. They floated in the air around him. Dark metal plates, joints, wiring that looked like spun glass. They hung there for a heartbeat, suspended, silent. Then they moved toward him. Not fast, not aggressive, deliberate, like a puzzle solving itself. A chest plate settled against him. It was cool at first. Then it warmed. The metal seemed to soften. It molded to his frame. Shoulder pieces followed. They adjusted their angle, shortened their span to fit human proportions. Greaves wrapped his legs. The material tightened, became rigid, then flexible again. As if testing its new form, the fit was perfect. Not just close, exact. It felt like it had been made for him. The weight distributed evenly. No pressure points. No restricted movement. He could breathe easily. The suit felt alien. The texture was wrong. The way it moved with him was wrong. But it was precisely tailored. A second skin of dark metal and unknown tech. He looked at Varia. Her smile was gone. Her gold eyes were wide. Her mouth slightly open. Her hand had come up to her chest. She took a step back. Her shock was immediate, total. This wasn't supposed to happen. The armor had rejected everyone. For centuries. It was a relic, a story. Not a functional thing. Her diplomatic mask shattered. Revealed pure disbelief underneath. The suit warmed further. It wasn't external heat anymore. It came from within. A deep, gentle warmth that spread through his body. The metal felt alive against his skin. It pulsed softly. A slow rhythm, like a heartbeat. His own pulse answered it, fell into sync, then the sound started. A low hum. It came from the suit. From the room. The floating orbs brightened. Their light focused on him. Ancient mechanisms whirred to life. Gears that hadn't turned in millennia began to rotate. Systems that had been dormant for ages activated. The sound was clean, precise, no grinding. No hesitation. It was a machine waking from a long sleep. Remembering its purpose, the helmet was the last piece. It floated before his face. The dark surface remained featureless. No visor, no openings. It should have been blind, suffocating. Instead, he felt no fear, only anticipation. The helmet settled into place. It sealed with a soft hiss. The world went dark for a second. Then light returned, but not through his eyes. The suit provided the feed, clear, sharp, enhanced. The armor had recognized a host. It had scanned him, adapted to him, accepted him. It shouldn't have been possible. He was human, not Zephyrian, not of the Guardian bloodline. The suit was designed for a specific physiology, a specific genetic marker. It had ignored all that. It had found something in him that matched, something that qualified. The question hung in the air. How does armor that's been dormant for millennia recognize a human host? The answer was somewhere in his blood, in his bones, in a history he didn't know he had. Darkness held for a full second. Then light returned. But it wasn't vision. It was information. Raw data poured into his mind. A flood with no off switch. Reed had expected ceremonial weight. A historical artifact. He got a functioning system. A violent awakening, star charts unfolded behind his eyes. Not the clean mapped lines of Federation astral navigation. These were old, fierce constellations he'd never seen. Stars with names that felt like gravel in his mouth. Nebulae that pulsed with strange energy signatures. The maps moved. They showed trajectories. Hidden pathways through space. Routes that bypassed normal travel. Shortcuts through reality itself. It was a navigational system for a war that spanned galaxies. Weapon schematics scrolled past next. Devices of impossible design. Cannons that fired concentrated starlight. Blades that cut through dimensions. Shields that didn't block but redirected energy back to its source. The principles defied Federation physics. The armor explained them anyway. The knowledge was cold, precise. It settled into his brain like it belonged there. He understood the power generation. the targeting systems. The cost of each activation, battle strategies followed. Not theories, memories. He saw civilizations rise and fall. Wars fought against enemies that were more void than substance. Tactics for combating foes that could phase through matter, that fed on fear, that multiplied in darkness. He felt the desperation of ancient commanders, their last stands, their brilliant, doomed counterattacks. The data was experiential. He didn't just learn it. He remembered it. As if he'd been there, the information felt ancient. Millennia old, dust and silence and forgotten suns. Yet it was immediately accessible. His mind processed it without effort. The suit translated everything, made it intuitive. He knew how to wield weapons he'd never seen, how to navigate space he'd never traveled. The knowledge was a living thing inside him. A second consciousness sharing his skull. His training had been for combat stress, for hostage situations, for political standoffs. It hadn't prepared him for this. A full sensory overload from another age. His head throbbed. A deep internal pressure. He tried to focus on one thing. A single star chart. A single weapon. The flow wouldn't stop. It was a river and he was the bank eroding. The knowledge didn't feel generic. It felt personal, tailored. The armor hadn't just dumped its database. It had filtered it, selected what he needed, what he could use. It presented strategies that matched his tactical preferences, weapons that suited his combat style. It knew him. It had scanned more than his body. It had mapped his mind, his instincts, his military record. The sharing was not gentle. It was an assault, a violent transfer of wisdom accumulated over ages. The armor had been silent for centuries. It had been waiting, gathering, processing. Now it poured everything into him at once. It was a desperate act, a necessity. The suit wasn't just arming him. It was making him its new memory, its new guardian. The last one was gone. He was the replacement. The payoff was a galaxy's worth of lost science and forgotten wars now living in a human mind. He held star maps to dead systems, schematics for weapons that could shatter worlds, strategies for fighting nightmares. It was a library of extinction events and survival methods. The armor had given him the tools, the knowledge to face what was coming. The reason it had awakened. The shadows were returning, and he was now the only one who remembered how to fight them. The armor should have rejected him. His biology was wrong. Human physiology differed from Zephyrian in a dozen critical markers. Bone density variations, neural conductivity rates, blood chemistry. The suit was calibrated for a specific genetic signature, one that hadn't existed on Earth. Reed knew the basics of xenobiology. He'd been briefed. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The suit's compatibility suggested a deeper link, something beneath the surface biology. The armor hadn't just tolerated his form. It had embraced it, reshaped itself to match his human frame. The systems integrated seamlessly. No errors, no warnings. It read his vital signs like they were native, responded to his neural commands without translation lag. It treated him as if he belonged, as if his body was home. Earth's humans might share more with Zephyria than anyone suspected. Not just bipedal forms or oxygen breathing, something fundamental. A common thread in their genetic tapestry. The guardian lineage might have left markers across species. Ancient travelers, explorers, perhaps even settlers. The stories of old Earth spoke of visitors from the stars. Every culture had them, myths, legends. Maybe they weren't stories. Maybe they were memories. This compatibility broke every Federation anthropological model. The text said humans evolved in isolation. A unique branch of life. Zephyrians were another branch entirely. Different homeworld. Different evolutionary path. The odds of such precise biological harmony were astronomical. Yet here it was. The suit functioned perfectly. It recognized his nervous system, his cellular structure, his very DNA. The armor responded to him as if he were native, as if he were Kalar reborn. Finding it became an urgent necessity. The shadows multiplied outside. They pressed against the palace shields. The air grew colder with each passing minute. The light dimmed. They didn't have days. They had hours, maybe less. Every second spent searching was a second closer to being overrun. The heart was their only chance, their one opportunity to turn a desperate defense into a counterattack. The heart represented the last hope against extinction. It was more than a tool. It was a symbol. A promise that the darkness was not absolute, that the Guardian's legacy could be reclaimed, that light could win. Finding it meant everything. Losing meant nothing would remain. The legendary heart of Zapiria had been hidden for centuries because it was never lost. It was sleeping. It was part of the throne itself, the great crystal dais that every ruler had sat upon for generations, the focal point of their government. The heart was the source of the throne's energy, its stability. It was concealed not by distance but by familiarity. It was the one place no one thought to look. The most obvious place in the entire palace. It had been right under their feet the whole time, waiting for someone with the right eyes to see it. Someone who could look past the legend to the truth hidden in plain sight. The air grew heavy in the throne room. It wasn't just cold anymore. It was thick, hard to breathe. The shadows stopped advancing. They pooled together, coalesced. A form took shape in the center of the room. It wasn't a body. It was darkness given voice, a presence that spoke without sound. Its words formed directly in Reed's mind, smooth, persuasive, ancient. The Shadow Lord offered power. Not threats, not resistance, an opportunity. It promised Reed godhood among mortals, a seat above kings. The heart's energy, combined with the armor, could make him ruler of empires. He could reshape galaxies, command fleets, bend reality to his will. The Federation would be his to guide. Earth would become the center of a new order. He wouldn't just be a soldier. He would be a sovereign, a living legend. This temptation tested his ethical foundation. The offer was real. He could feel the truth in it. The armor responded to the idea. It showed him simulations, visions of what he could achieve, cities rebuilt to his design. Wars ended with a gesture, peace enforced through absolute power. It was everything a leader could want, everything a protector might dream of. The cost was hidden in the fine print. Absolute control came with absolute loneliness. The visions showed him a throne of crystal and shadow. He sat alone. No advisors, no equals, no varia. The armor would be his only companion. A tool for a god, but tools don't talk back. They don't challenge. They don't care. The power would isolate him, separate him from everything that made him human. He would become a force of nature, not a person. Varia's warning cut through the visions. Her hand found his arm. Her voice was a whisper in the mental storm. She told him the armor responds to desires. It amplifies them. It shows you what you want to see. The heart's power is pure energy. It has no morality. It will become what you make it. A tool for connection or a weapon for control. The choice was his. But it was a choice that would define more than just this battle. The choice between connection and conquest arrived. He looked at Varia. Her gold eyes held fear, but also trust. She believed he would make the right decision. She represented a different path, a bond between two people, between two species, a shared future built on cooperation, not domination. It was harder, messier. It meant doubt and compromise and working together. It meant staying human. He felt the armor waiting. It would obey his choice. It was a key. It could unlock a prison or a palace. The Shadow Lord's offer was seductive, clean, simple, power-solved problems. But it also erased them. And in erasing problems, it erased the people who had them. He would become a solution that nobody needed. A god in an empty church. Resolution came not as a shout but as a quiet decision. He had to choose humanity over omnipotence. He rejected the vision, pushed it away. The armor shuddered. The dark presence recoiled. The connection broke. The shadows in the room writhed. Their master's disappointment was a physical pressure. Reed felt lighter, colder but whole. He had chosen the harder path. The human path. The Shadow Lord tempts by showing the ultimate fantasy of control. It offers a world without problems by offering a world without people. It presents absolute power as the answer to every fear, the chance to never be hurt again, to never fail, to never need anyone. It preys on the desire for safety and twists it into isolation. It offers a crown that costs everything worth wearing it for, a throne that becomes a cage, a victory that feels like defeat. Reed saw the price, and he chose to remain a man who could still feel the weight of another's hand on his arm, who could still choose connection over perfection. Their bond became a weapon against darkness. The ritual created a connection between Reed and Varia. It wasn't just a transfer of energy. It was a merging of minds. He felt her fear, her determination, her hope. She felt his resolve, his fatigue, his growing understanding of the armor's systems. The link was a two-way street. It gave him power. It gave her insight. They became a single unit, a combined force. This bond might purify the corrupted heart. The artifact was tainted. The shadows had touched it long ago. Their influence lingered. A darkness that resisted the armor's energy, but the emotional energy they generated was different. It was pure, unfiltered. It came from a place the shadows couldn't corrupt, a place of connection, of trust. It was a light they couldn't extinguish. Emotional energy could channel cosmic power effectively. The armor responded to it. The systems brightened. The energy beams grew sharper, more focused. Each shot carried not just power, but intention. A will to protect, a desire to save. The shadows recoiled from it. They were creatures of emptiness, of consumption. This energy was creation. It was the opposite of what they were. It hurt them in a way raw force couldn't. Love became a battlefield technology against the void. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a practical tool. Their connection fueled the armor. It let him fight without draining his life force. Each shot was powered by shared experience, by mutual trust, by the simple, fierce need to keep each other alive. It was a resource the shadows couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't counter. The armor's neural interface reconfigured for this purpose. The tiny ports adjusted their frequency. They tuned themselves to the emotional spectrum. They became conduits for feeling, for memory, for hope. The suit learned to process this new energy source. It adapted, evolved, it became more than a weapon. It became an amplifier of their bond, a translator between two different beings, a bridge. Affection and trust weren't distractions but catalysts. In the heat of combat, such things were often seen as weaknesses, emotions to be controlled, suppressed. Here they were, the foundation of their strength. Every moment of understanding, every gesture of support, every shared look. It all fed the armor. It made them stronger, more coordinated, more effective. Their relationship became their greatest tactical advantage. Their connection deepened under combat pressure. They fought back to back. Shadows swarmed the throne room. Reed fired controlled bursts. Varya directed his aim. She saw patterns he missed, felt shifts in the enemy's movements through their link. They moved as one. No words needed. The armor hummed with their combined energy. It was a dance of light and darkness. And they were the music. Human empathy fused with alien heritage for salvation. His human capacity for connection. Her Zephyrian understanding of energy. Together they created something new. A synergy that neither could achieve alone. The armor was the tool. Their bond was the power source. The heart was the goal. They needed all three to win, to survive, to reclaim what was lost. When love becomes a weapon against cosmic darkness, it doesn't fight with brute force. It fights with resonance. It creates a frequency that the void cannot tolerate. It builds bridges where there were only gaps. It turns two separate beings into a single unstoppable force. The shadows feed on isolation, on fear, on despair. They cannot consume connection. They cannot digest hope. They break against it like waves on stone. Love becomes the one thing they cannot understand, cannot predict, cannot defeat. It is the light that never goes out. The fire that burns in the coldest dark. The answer to a question the shadows never thought to ask. Varya's shock confirmed the impossibility. She stood frozen, her golden eyes wide, her hands clenched at her sides. She knew the legends better than anyone, knew the armor's history, knew it had rejected every Zephyrian who tried for centuries. It was a sacred artifact, a relic of pure lineage. For it to accept an alien, a human, it shouldn't happen, couldn't happen. Her disbelief was a physical thing in the room, a silence louder than any alarm. Reed represented a forgotten connection, a bridge between worlds that shouldn't exist. His very presence in that suit was proof of a shared past, a history buried under millennia of separation. The Guardian bloodline hadn't died out. It had spread. It had taken root on a blue world far from home. It had waited, dormant, until the armor called it forth again. He was the answer to a question no one had thought to ask. What if the Guardians weren't just Zephyrian? What if they were a concept, a role, a duty that could pass to any species that carried the spark? The payoff was a revelation that rewrote history. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. They were family, distant cousins separated by time and space. The connection existed in their blood, in their bones. The lost Zephyrian Guardians hadn't just visited Earth. They had become part of it. They had left their mark on human DNA, a dormant potential, a legacy waiting for the right moment to awaken. The armor hadn't chosen a human. It had chosen a guardian, and it had found one where no one thought to look. Varia's shock faded. It was replaced by something darker, a grim understanding. The legend was clear. It had always been clear. An outsider would awaken the guardian. The prophecy hung in Zephyrian temples, carved into ancient stone. It was not a promise. It was a warning, a prediction spoken with dread, not hope. The text described this exact moment, a foreign form inside the armor, a suit that should have remained silent. The tension wasn't about the armor working. It was about who it worked for. The chosen one was never supposed to be human. The prophecy spoke of a stranger from beyond the stars, a being of unknown origin, but the assumption was always another Zephyrian offshoot, a lost colony, a related species, not a creature from a world so distant, so unknown. The legend had been a point of theological debate for generations. A vague, unsettling verse. Now it was concrete, and it was worse than anyone imagined. The armor's activation was not a triumph. It was an alarm, a signal flare. The ancient texts were explicit. The Guardian only awakens when dimensional instability is imminent, when the walls between realities grow thin. The suit was a key, its energy signature a beacon. Its activation meant the shadows were already stirring, waiting for the door to open. Reed's presence hadn't caused the crisis. It was the response to it. The armor had felt the coming storm. It had reached out, found the only available weapon. His arrival fulfilled a deep-seated fear. The prophecy reframed his accidental role as something inevitable, inescapable. He hadn't stumbled into this. He had been drawn. The mission parameters, the hidden security chip, the convenient timing. It felt less like chance and more like design. A path laid out long before he was born. He was a piece moved into position on a board he couldn't see. The armor recognized him because it was waiting for him, because the universe had already written his name into this story. Varia understood the implications immediately. Her golden eyes lost their warmth. They held a new weight, a burden of knowing. She looked at him not as a diplomat, not as a curiosity, but as a portent, the one the old stories warned about. Her joke in the relic chamber hadn't been casual. It had been a nervous probe, a test of a terrifying possibility. Now that possibility stood before her, clad in her ancestor's armor, breathing her air. This was not a malfunction. It was a predicted crisis unfolding exactly as foretold. The system was working as designed. The armor's purpose was singular, to choose a champion when the threat returned. It didn't care about bloodlines or species. It cared about capability, compatibility. It had scanned the galaxy, found a mind and a body that could bear the load. It had chosen Reed not despite his humanity, but because of it. Because something in his genetic makeup, in his psychological profile, matched the need. The armor wasn't supposed to work for anyone but the chosen guardian. And in that moment, for reasons buried in forgotten history, it had chosen him, the outsider, the human, the answer to a prayer nobody wanted answered. The key had turned. The lock was open, and now something was coming for the keyhole. The armor's energy signature was a beacon in the dark. A flare shot into the void. It pulsed with a frequency that normal sensors couldn't detect. But something else could. Something that lived between the layers of reality. The response was immediate, and violent, shadowy forms began to coalesce across the capital. They didn't emerge from ships or teleportation pads. They simply appeared, as if they'd been there all along waiting for a signal. They were patches of absolute darkness, shapes that drank the light around them. The air grew cold where they stood, a deep, biting cold that felt wrong, unnatural. These creatures moved without sound. They glided over the crystalline streets. Their forms shifted, blurred at the edges. They had no clear shape, no defined limbs, just a core of darkness that seemed to absorb everything. Light, sound, hope. They touched a Zephyrian guard. The guard didn't scream. He simply dimmed. His armor didn't break. His body didn't fall. He just lost substance, became translucent, then gone. The creature pulsed slightly, grew more solid. It had fed city defenses activated automatically. Energy beams lanced out from hidden turrets. They passed through the shadows without effect. The light didn't reflect, didn't scatter. It was consumed. The beams faded into nothing. The creatures didn't even slow. They flowed over the defensive positions. The guns fell silent. The guards stationed there simply vanished. No struggle, no resistance, just silence and absence. The threat matched the armor's database perfectly. Reed saw it through the suit's memory. Ancient battles against these same enemies. Civilizations that had fallen exactly like this. Their defenses useless. Their people drained. The shadows didn't conquer. They consumed. They didn't leave ruins. They left empty worlds, silent cities, places where nothing lived. Not even bacteria. They were the ultimate predators. They didn't hunt bodies. They hunted life force. The very energy of existence. He saw memories of entire star systems going dark. Of fleets that fired everything they had and achieved nothing. Of planets where the shadows pooled in the streets until nothing moved. The scale of the danger was immense, galactic, eternal. His briefing had mentioned regional tensions. Political instability. It hadn't prepared him for an extinction-level event. This wasn't a war. It was a harvest. The diplomatic mission was over. It had lasted about 10 minutes. Now it was a survival scenario. Pure and simple. Reed looked at Faria. Her face was pale. Her golden eyes held a grim acceptance. She knew what this was. What it meant. Her people had stories about these moments. About the end of cycles. The closing of ages. She had expected it. Just not today. Not with a human standing beside her clad in her ancestor's armor. The dimensional shadows hunt by sensing concentrated life energy. Advanced civilizations generate vast amounts of it. They become bright beacons in the dimensional planes. The shadows are drawn to this energy. They follow the scent across realities. They don't use ships or technology. They slip through weak points in space-time. They are parasites on existence itself. They don't invade. They infect. And once they find a rich feeding ground, they don't stop until it's barren. The armor's activation was the brightest flare in millennia. It didn't just warn them. It invited them to dinner. And Zapiria was the main course. Reed raised his arm. The armor responded without thought. A beam of white energy lanced out. It didn't look like light. It was something else. Something that cut the air. It struck the nearest shadow. The creature didn't dissolve. It unwound. Its form frayed at the edges. Then it was gone. Silence followed. No explosion. No residue. Just empty space where the predator had been. He fired again. And again. The suit didn't have a trigger. It read his intention. Each shot was a decision. A focused act of will. Dozens of the creatures vanished under his assault. They didn't try to evade. They didn't seem to understand the threat. They were creatures of instinct. Of hunger. They kept coming. He kept firing. The street began to clear. The immediate danger receded. Then the suit warned him. A notification appeared in his vision. Not words. A feeling. A sudden hollow sensation in his chest. A sharp cold ache behind his eyes. It was a life force drainage alert. The armor was drawing power directly from him. Not from a battery. Not from the ship's reactor. From his own vitality. Each shot took something vital. A piece of his energy. His essence, he felt it. A tangible loss. Like blood leaving a wound. A faint dizziness after each activation. A slight tremor in his hands. His breathing grew shallow. The suit was using him as fuel. The power had a cost. A terrible personal cost. He wasn't piloting a machine. He was feeding a predator that protected him. Combat effectiveness required careful tempo management. He couldn't just fire continuously. He had to pause. To breathe. To let his body recover between shots. He had to choose targets with precision. Make every shot count. Waste was not an option. Waste was suicide. He fell into a rhythm. Aim. Fire. Breathe. The street was a dance of light and shadow, and he was the only dancer. Raw power couldn't compensate for limited endurance. The suit was capable of immense destruction. He could feel that potential. A well of energy waiting to be unleashed. But every drop came from his own life. He could fire a blast that would clear the entire plaza. It would also probably kill him. The suit didn't care. It would take what it needed. It was a tool, a weapon. It had one purpose, and it would burn him out to achieve it. He felt the armor consuming him with every activation. It was a subtle drain, a slow leak of his very being. His skin felt thinner. His thoughts moved slower. A deep fatigue began to set in. Not muscular, not mental, something older, more fundamental. He was powering an ancient relic with his own soul. The victory he was achieving was temporary. Each shadow destroyed brought him closer to collapse. Victory demanded more than he could sustainably give. He could win this fight. He could clear this street, protect this block, but he couldn't do it forever. The armor was a short-term solution with a long-term price. It was designed for a guardian with a different biology, a different energy source. A human was a poor substitute. A candle powering a starship engine. It would burn bright, and then it would burn out. The armor drains its wearer's life force because it was designed for a species that generates energy differently. Cyprian guardians could channel intense emotional and physical experiences into power, fear, rage, even joy. They could convert these peaks into sustainable energy. The armor was built to harness that, to use the wearer's own emotional spectrum as fuel. But human biology doesn't work that way. Reed's body couldn't convert emotion into energy. It could only give pure life force, vitality. Years of his life. The suit was trying to run on the wrong type of fuel, and it was burning him up from the inside. Reed felt the drain deepen, a cold hollow spreading through his chest. He had cleared half the street. The shadows were gone for now, but so was his strength. He leaned against a crystalline wall. The suit felt heavier. His breathing came in shallow pulls. Varia watched him. Her golden eyes measured the cost. She saw the tremor in his hands, the pale cast to his skin. She knew what was happening. The armor was consuming him. She moved closer. Her voice was low, urgent. She explained their ancestors' discovery. The first Guardians faced the same problem. The armor's power demand was immense. It could burn out a wearer in hours. But they found a solution. A workaround buried in their own biology. Intense experiences generated exceptional life energy. Combat, fear, adrenaline, even powerful positive emotions, joy, determination, love. These peaks created a surplus, a burst of pure vitality that the armor could harness. This energy could power a guardian far beyond normal limits. It wasn't about physical strength. It was about emotional intensity. The suit could channel that surge, use it to fuel its systems without draining the wearer's base life force. It was a sustainable method, a way to fight without dying with each shot. The knowledge was ancient, passed down through guardian lineages, a secret kept for those who needed it. The ritual was simple in design, complex in execution. It required direct skin contact, palm to palm, or sometimes forehead to forehead. The armor had neural interfaces at key points, tiny ports that normally linked to the wearer's nervous system. These could be used for transfer. One person could give their emotional energy to another. It was a direct feed, a transfusion of pure vitality. The method felt invasive, a profound intimacy. It wasn't just about touching skin. It was about opening your mind, letting someone feel what you felt, your fear, your hope, your resolve. It required absolute trust. You were giving a piece of your inner self to another person, letting them use it as fuel. It was a practical solution with a deep emotional cost. Trust became as important as the energy itself. The ritual wouldn't work without it. The giver had to be willing. The receiver had to be open. Any resistance, any doubt, the connection would fail. The energy would dissipate. It was a pact, a bond forged in necessity. It turned two individuals into a single unit, a shared power source for an ancient weapon. Their bond could become their greatest strategic advantage. A human and a Xiperian, two different species, two different emotional spectrums. Together, they might generate more power than either could alone. Their combined experiences, their shared fear, their growing connection. It could be the key to surviving this, to fighting back without burning out. The ancient ritual was called the conduit. It was a technique of focused emotional transfer. One person would concentrate on a powerful memory or feeling, a moment of pure terror, a burst of incredible joy, a memory of profound love. They would channel that energy, focus it, then through skin contact at the neural interface points, they would push that energy into the armor's wearer. The suit would absorb it, convert it into pure power. It was a way to weaponize emotion, to turn feeling into fire, and it was the only way a human could wield the armor without dying. Faria spoke of the heart. Her voice was low. The words carried weight. Zepiria's survival depended on finding a single artifact, a power source lost for centuries. Her father had spent his life searching for it. Decades of expeditions. Endless research. He died without finding a clue. It was his greatest regret. Their last hope, the heart, was not a jewel, not a battery. It was a creation of the first Guardians, a device of immense energy. It could power the armor indefinitely. It could purify corrupted zones. It was the key to driving the shadows back for good. It was the difference between holding a line and winning a war. Without it, they were just delaying the inevitable. The throne platform was made of a rare crystal. Faria's fingers traced its surface as she spoke. It was the only piece of its kind on the planet. The legend said the heart was hidden within it. Not buried underneath, integrated, a part of the structure itself. Governance on Zepiria wasn't just political. It was energetic. The throne was the planet's focal point, the place where power converged. The heart's legend felt more real as Reed accessed the armor's data. The suit's memory held fragments, images of the heart's creation. Its installation, its purpose. It was a regulator, a stabilizer. It kept dimensional rifts sealed. It maintained the balance. Its loss was what allowed the shadows to return. Its recovery was the only path to true victory. His human lineage might hold the final clue. The armor's data was filtered for him. It showed him patterns, symbols that felt familiar, constellations that matched old Earth myths, stories his grandmother had told him. He saw a connection, a thread between his world and this one. The Guardians hadn't just visited Earth, they had left a map, a guide for one of their own to find the way home. Reed's hand closed around the heart. It wasn't a separate object. It was a part of the throne itself. A section of the crystal platform glowed brighter. His fingers sank into the light. It felt warm, solid, real. The artifact revealed itself not by moving but by waking. The entire dais shimmered. Patterns emerged in the crystal, circuits of light, pathways of energy. The heart had been there all along, waiting. Blue-white light erupted from the armor's seams. It wasn't a glow. It was a blaze, a fire that didn't burn. The light poured out of every joint, every plate. It filled the room. The shadows recoiled. Their forms hissed where the light touched them. The armor was no longer just metal. It was a vessel, a container for something immense, something ancient. The Guardian energy signature spread planet-wide. It pulsed out from the throne room, a wave of pure light. It swept across the capital, over the mountains, across the oceans. Every Zepirian felt it, a warmth in their mind, a sudden calm, a feeling of protection. The signal reached into space. The horizon sensors spiked. The Federation crew watched their screens. They saw an energy reading that defied measurement, a power source that shouldn't exist. Reed transformed. He wasn't wearing the suit anymore. He was the suit. The armor fused with him, became part of his body. His mind expanded. He felt the planet beneath him, the people on it, the fear, the hope. He could sense every shadow, every rift. He was no longer a man in a machine. He was a sentient guardian, a living weapon, a force of nature given form. The Shadow Lord's retreat began immediately. The dark presence in the room shattered. It didn't fade, it broke, like glass under pressure. The shadows lost cohesion. They didn't vanish, they fled. They streamed out of the palace, out of the city. They sought the darkness between stars, the places where the light hadn't reached yet. They were running. For the first time in millennia, they were afraid. Hostages cocooned in darkness were released. People who had been taken, absorbed. They materialized where they had fallen. They were weak, disoriented, but alive. The shadowy cocoons dissolved into nothing. The stolen life force returned to them, a reverse flow of energy. The Guardian's light undid the damage. It didn't just destroy the enemy. It healed the victims. Radiance flooded the throne room. It purged the corruption. The cold vanished. The air warmed. The lingering darkness burned away. The crystal walls glowed with internal light. The floating orbs brightened to sun-like intensity. The room felt clean, pure, safe. The Shadow's touch was gone, erased by the Guardian's awakening. The Guardian wasn't destroyed but dormant until now. It had been sleeping, waiting for the right moment. The right person? It hadn't chosen a Zephyrian because the threat was different this time. It needed a new perspective. A human mind. A different kind of courage. The armor was a shell, a tool. The Guardian was the consciousness that used it. A being of light and purpose. It had waited inside the suit for someone who could handle the burden. Someone who would choose connection over power, empathy over control. It had found that someone in a Federation commander who came to deliver condolences and stayed to save a world. Alex transforms by surrendering. He doesn't gain power. He becomes a conduit for it. The armor was a key. The heart was the lock. His humanity was the hand that turned it. His connection to Varia was the reason it worked. The Guardian energy needed a vessel that understood sacrifice, that valued life over victory. His transformation wasn't about becoming more. It was about becoming less, letting go of his individual self to become part of something larger, a protector, a symbol, a living shield. He stopped being Alex Reed, diplomat, and became the Guardian of Zephyria. Not by conquering the armor, but by joining with it, by accepting that some duties are bigger than one person, some lights are meant to be shared. The Guardian's reach extended across space. Reed felt the boundaries of reality become clear. He could see the dimensional pathways, thin threads of energy connecting different layers of existence. The shadows used these paths. They traveled through them like rats in walls. The armor's expanded capabilities allowed him to perceive these routes, to understand their structure, to find the weak points. Rifts between realities needed sealing permanently. Temporary solutions wouldn't work. The shadows would return. They would find new ways in. The damage had to be repaired at the source. The tears in reality itself had to be mended. This wasn't about winning a battle. It was about fixing a broken system. A cosmic repair job. Energy exploded outward from him. A wave of blue-white light that didn't travel through space. It traveled through dimensions. It created a purifying net. A web of energy that sought out every rift, every weak point, every place where the fabric of reality had worn thin. The light didn't destroy. It healed, it reinforced, it sealed. The Shadow Lord's hold on Zephyria unraveled completely. The presence that had haunted the planet dissolved. The lingering darkness burned away. The shadows lost their connection to this reality. Their pathways closed. Their footholds vanished. They were cut off, stranded in the void between worlds. The planet was clean, whole, protected. This victory required personal sacrifice beyond military service. Reed felt the cost. The energy came from him, from Varia, from their connection, but the scale was immense. The toll was heavy. He wasn't just tired. He was changed. The act of sealing reality itself left marks on his soul. He would carry this forever. The knowledge of what he had done, the weight of what he had become. The Guardian legacy continued through human vessel. The armor was just a tool. The true Guardian was the consciousness that used it. That consciousness now lived in him. It wasn't possession. It was integration. He remained Alex Reed, but he was also the Guardian, the protector. The seal on the door. The legacy wasn't about bloodlines. It was about purpose, about choice. He had chosen this, accepted it. Ancient protection awakened through unlikely partnership. A human and a Zephyrian, two different species, two different worlds. Together they had done what neither could alone. They had combined human empathy with alien technology, human courage with ancient wisdom. The partnership was the key. The Guardian needed both. The armor was the tool. The heart was the power, but the bond between them was the catalyst. The thing that made it work. The armor's awakening seals dimensional rifts because it was designed for that purpose. The ancient Guardians didn't just fight shadows. They maintained reality itself. They were mechanics of existence. Plumbers for the cosmos. The armor was their toolkit. It generates a specific frequency of energy that reinforces dimensional boundaries. It's not a weapon. It's a repair system. The energy identifies weak points in reality and patches them. It's like an immune system response to dimensional infection. The shadows are the disease. The Guardian is the antibody. The armor's awakening triggers this response automatically. It's a built-in function. A failsafe. The Guardians knew the shadows would return. They designed their armor to not just fight them, but to fix what they broke, to heal the wounds in reality that allowed the invasion. The sealing is permanent because the repair uses energy from the heart itself, a power source that transcends normal physics. It doesn't just close the rifts. It makes them stronger than before, more resistant to future attacks. The armor's awakening is a reset button for reality, a way to restore balance, to clean up the mess the shadows leave behind. It's why the Guardian is so important, not just as a warrior, but as a maintainer, a keeper of the peace between dimensions, a guarantee that light has a place in the universe, that some doors once closed stay closed. The armor never left him. It stayed integrated into his being, a permanent layer between his skin and the world. 3 months later, he still felt its presence constantly, a low hum in his bones, a weight that wasn't physical, a consciousness sharing his mind. The suit was part of him now. He couldn't remove it. He couldn't go back. The transformation was permanent. A fragment of the heart remained with him, a small piece of crystal embedded in his palm. It served as a permanent reminder. It glowed softly when he concentrated, when he felt strong emotion. It was a connection to the throne, to Varia, to the power he now wielded. It was also a brand, a mark of what he had become. He would carry it for the rest of his life. His Federation career ended with the transformation. He sent his resignation from the palace. A short, formal message. No explanations, no request for reassignment. They accepted it without protest. No questions asked. His file was closed. Captain Alex Reed was listed as retired. The man who left Earth on a diplomatic mission no longer existed. He was something else now. The personal costs were deep. Identity loss was the first. He was no longer just a man. He was a symbol, a protector, a living weapon. People looked at him with awe. With fear, they saw the Guardian, not the person underneath. He had to learn a new way to be, a new way to interact. His old life was a photograph, something to look at but not touch. Constant vigilance became his normal. He was always aware of the dimensional fabric around him. He felt every tiny fluctuation, every potential weak point. It was a background hum in his consciousness, a never-ending watch. He couldn't turn it off. He couldn't take a break. The duty was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, forever. The Guardian role required perpetual commitment. It wasn't a job with shifts. It was a state of being. He had to monitor Zapiria's stability, respond to any dimensional stresses, train with the armor's evolving capabilities. His time was no longer his own. His needs came second. The planet's safety came first, always. He paid the price that ancient heroes were designed to pay. Their biology could handle the strain. Their society supported the burden. He was human, alone on an alien world. He lost his home, his career, his old self. He gained immense power, but power is a tool, not a comfort. It doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't ease loneliness. It just gives you more things to protect, more reasons to be afraid. The cost for wielding power meant for ancient heroes is your ordinary life. Alex traded a future of familiar things for a destiny of constant watchfulness. He lost the simple pleasure of being unnoticed, of being just a man in a crowd. He became a singular point, a fixed star around which a world now turned. His freedom was exchanged for responsibility, his personal dreams for planetary safety. The armor gave him the strength to protect a civilization. It took away his ability to ever be just one person again. The weight of the Guardian is borne alone even when surrounded by others. It is a quiet price paid every second of every day, in the silent spaces between heartbeats. Zapiria and the Federation forged an alliance. It was not built on trust. It was built on necessity. Reed's resignation was accepted without protest. The Federation saw the value in a friendly relationship with a planet that had a living Guardian. They did not question the transformation. They calculated the benefits. The paperwork was processed quietly. His service record was sealed. He became an asset, a strategic one. The agreement included exclusive trading rights. Zapirian crystal tech was advanced. Their energy systems were decades ahead of Federation science. The exchange was simple. Technology for protection. The Federation would station ships in the system. They would provide a defensive umbrella. In return, they got first access to new developments. A permanent human ambassador was stationed on Zapiria. He represented Earth's interests, He also reported on the Guardian's status. The arrangement was practical, cold. It was a business deal disguised as diplomacy. Varaya was crowned queen. The ceremony was swift. Her father was honored. Her rule began. Reed stood beside her as consort. He wore simple clothes. The armor was hidden beneath. A constant presence. Their partnership was formalized. It was a political move. A stabilizing force for her people. They saw the Guardian at their queen's side. It gave them confidence. It made the new alliance feel less foreign, less threatening. Their genetic compatibility was called cosmically ordained. The priest said it was fate. The historian said it was ancient design. The scientists had no explanation. The fact remained. A human could bond with Zephyrian technology. He could wear the armor. He could share energy with their queen. This connection became the foundation of the new order. It was a story that people could believe in. A narrative that eased the fear of change. It made the impossible seem destined. Policy and culture shifted through their personal partnership. Varia's decisions were influenced by Reed's perspective. His human understanding of conflict, of diplomacy. She brought ancient wisdom, a long view of history. Together they crafted laws that blended tradition with progress. The Zephyrian military began training with Federation tactics. Federation engineers studied crystal power sources. The exchange went both ways. It was a slow, careful integration. No one wanted to move too fast. Two worlds became bound by more than commerce and defense. They were linked by the bond between two people. A human and a Zephyrian. A guardian and a queen. Their relationship was the glue that held the alliance together. It was a personal stake in each other's survival. The Federation protected Zephyria because Reed was there. The Zephyrians shared their technology because Varia trusted him. It was a fragile thing, built on a single connection, but it held. Victory had created pragmatic interstellar relations. They were not friends. They were partners. The alliance was a careful balance. Ancient destiny on one side, modern politics on the other. The Federation wanted resources and security. Zephyria wanted protection and stability. Both got what they needed, but the tension was always there. A quiet undercurrent of mistrust, the shadow of what had been lost, the fear of what might be demanded next. It was the agreement written in starlight and signed with a silent understanding that some alliances are necessary, not wanted. They would make it work because the alternative was unthinkable. The darkness was still out there, and it remembered the light. The armor represented a fundamental question about technology's relationship with humanity. It was a tool of immense power, but that power came at a direct personal cost. It wasn't a weapon you could simply set down after the fight. It became part of you, demanding a piece of your very life to function. This wasn't a clean exchange of energy. It was a consumption, a slow, steady drain on the user's essence, forcing a brutal calculation of value versus sacrifice with every decision made. Power of that magnitude required a careful balance with ethical consideration. Using the armor was never a simple tactical choice. Each activation meant weighing a strategic victory against a personal loss. The life force drain echoed real concerns about how we power our own world. It mirrored the uncomfortable truth that progress often has a hidden cost. A bill that comes due in ways we don't immediately see, extracted from resources we can't easily replenish. The suit made that cost visceral and immediate, impossible to ignore. The ritual bond offered a different path. It reframed intimacy not as a vulnerability, but as a strategic strength. Trust became a renewable energy source. Emotional connection was converted into sustainable power, transforming a potential weakness into the most potent weapon they had. This shifted the entire paradigm of combat. It proved that raw force had limits, but cooperation and understanding could break through barriers that strength alone could never overcome. Emotional intelligence wasn't a secondary trait. It became as critical as military prowess. The armor responded to intention, to clarity of purpose, to the strength of the bond between Reed and Varaya. Their ability to understand each other, to communicate without words, to share fear and hope, directly amplified their combat effectiveness. It was the difference between burning out alone and fighting on together. Their cooperation, built on that hard-won trust, saved a civilization where superior firepower had consistently failed throughout history. Humanity met this ancient technomagic at the very edge of their understanding. It was a collision of advanced science and principles that felt like magic, demanding a new way of thinking. The Federation's straightforward, mechanistic view of the universe wasn't enough to comprehend a technology powered by empathy. The resolution to the conflict didn't come from a bigger gun or a more clever strategy. It came from character-driven choices, the decision to trust, the courage to connect, the strength to choose protection over power. The narrative showed that courage redefined civilizations not through destruction, but through connection. The choice to embrace the ritual, to build a bond instead of seeking domination, is what ultimately sealed the rifts. The technology was a catalyst, but the human and alien heart was the engine. It demonstrated that the most advanced tool is only as good as the hands that wield it, and the conscience that guides it. The armor was a marvel, but the real wonder was the capacity for trust that made it function without consuming its user. The story leaves us with a quiet truth. The future isn't built on what we can take, but on what we are willing to share. Love and courage rewrote the fate of a world. An ordinary man took a dare and became something more. His willingness to connect defied ancient design. The collaboration between human and alien forged a bond stronger than any weapon. The Guardian's legacy survives through sacrifice. The price of protection is paid in the quiet moments, a constant watch maintained by those who choose duty over self. Some alliances are inevitable, written into the fabric of reality long before either species named their stars. They wait for the right moment to awaken.